Hi all, I have an absolutely fascinating game to show you today. Ding Liren against Magnus Carlsen. So Ding Liren is the Chinese #1, ranked 3 in the world at the moment, at the time of this video. Let's have a look. So St. Louis Rapid and Blitz. This is the Rapid portion, which in the first 3 days it's a single round robin with a time control of 25 minutes for all moves and a 10-second delay from move 1. So Ding Liren plays d4. We see Magnus playing knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5, knight c3, bishop b4. This is the Queen's Gambit declined Rogozin Vienna variation. So it looks like a cross between a Nimzo Indian and a Queen's Gambit declined. Bishop g5, d takes, e4, b5. So making use of that pinned knight to play b5, trying to put maybe pressure on the light squares later. This is immediately undermined, but now striking at white's centre with c5, we have a takes, c takes d4, knight takes d4, h6, the bishop drops back, knight takes e4. Very sharp variation indeed. Queen c2, bishop b7, bishop takes c4, queen c7, protecting the bishop with queen b3, bishop takes c3. This leaves white with a backward pawn structurally. White has the bishop pair though. Black castles, white castles, rook c8. The bishop drops back, and you might be wondering here, what about c3? Well, one thing to point out, on queen takes c3 here, there's bishop takes e4. The knight's protecting the queen, and if the bishop takes here, that weakens c8 and runs into this horrible rook ac1, hitting the rook there. So black would have to give up the queen, and that's a disaster, of course. So that pawn, it's not great to take because of c5 at the moment. We have knight c5, queen b1, and black grabs, Magnus Carlsen grabs the light square bishop. Now queen takes c3 again is interesting, but it wasn't used here. We have knight d7, queen e2, and again, you know, it's interesting to check out queen takes c3. Here, white does have a certain amount of compensation. Concretely, if rook fc1, it's very important to play this first, then knight c6, and white does get a dangerous pawn. There's compensation for the pawn here, even though white's a pawn down. It's about equal. So we see actually this just ignored this c3 pawn. So knight b6, and white has an opportunity to hit the king's side and does so with queen g4. Very sharp move, threatening bishop takes h6, king h7. Here it's interesting to look at queen takes c3 again. In this position, yeah, bishop takes h6 is going to be dangerous for black. This kind of situation, white's getting a big advantage. Those dark squares look painfully weak. And if we look at this again, if say rook d8, then that's a total disaster. Rook takes e6, crashing through to black's king. So, okay, so king h7. We have now bishop f4 hitting the queen and encouraging e5, it seems. So there's various possibilities. Queen c4, queen e7, very interesting indeed. Perhaps queen c4 might be the strongest move in this position, and which actually kind of aligns to the structural defect, the backward pawn, just to sit on top of that backward pawn blockader and maybe use d5 later for another piece. We see though, maybe this is a slight slip up, queen c5, for very technical reasons. Now if e5, so check this out, check and queen takes e5, this should be about equal as well. If black wants equality, that's a way to play it. Although, you know, there are some nagging issues, white may be more comfortable. So for whatever reason, that forcing move is rejected. And on knight f5, it turns out this would be fine for black after g6. There's no real dangers here, even if this position looks dangerous, but there's ways for black to defend. Black's not getting mated there. But queen c4 is really interesting because, for example, bishop e5, there's a pin here against potentially this knight. So on bishop e5, let's say instead of rook ad1, let's have a look at this first, threatening mate. There's actually f6, and there's no knight takes e6 because of this pin knight. Just to put that on the board. So these mechanics kind of favour, black's king safety. If the bishop has to drop back, then e5. And again, this is just going to be wonderful for black. Look at this position. The bishop's a prisoner here in the pawn chain. There's horrible backward pawn here. That would be brilliant. So, queen c4 seems to have really quite a lot going for it. And if rook ad1, knight d5, it seems to be a Nimzovician approach to the position to blockade the opponent's possibilities, and also has a pin perk to be able to safeguard against bishop e5s with potentially f6. But in the game, this does seem an inaccuracy, queen c5, because now there's very interesting dynamic possibilities in the position after rook fe1. Interesting for white to attack the black king in quite a few variations. Knight c4 was played here, which kind of course, shields that c3 pawn. Just to show, knight d5, bishop e5, threatening mate. And if f6, there's knight takes e6 here. So, just to put that on the board, if f6, knight takes e6 would threaten mate. Again, that's horrible. So if black has to play knight f6, the queen can drop back, and this is going to be quite nice for white. There's nagging pressure there. So anyway, knight c4 was played, rook ad1, and this isn't just a routine centralizing move. Sometimes this rook can jump into d7 tactically to hit the king at g7, which we're about to see in some of the variations. So actually Magnus parried this rook entry with rook d8 just to show why this is so dangerous. If e5, can you see what white plays in this position? If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video, there's actually a really stunning behind the scenes resource which probably explains partly why rook d8 was played by Magnus. So white play here, 5 seconds. Okay, there's actually a stunner with bishop takes h6. And this is fueled by a tempo gain, this combination. So it threatens mate. If g takes, guess what white plays here? There's a tempo gain as a fuel mechanism here. Knight e6 hitting the queen, threatening mate, and this rook d7 is there ready to pounce. So if f takes, there's rook d7 mating. So it seems as though this is really quite dangerous dynamically after bishop takes h6. What could black do? Give up the queen f8, that could just be taken, and then taking the knight. So rook d8, and now again white has this attacking free hand for a moment and uses it with rook d3. This is a bit unpleasant, this rook lift. We see queen e7. Just to give some flavours of the position, just a token move just to see what's going on. Rook g3, threatening mate, and this is just black crumbling, so threatening all sorts. Black's just crumbling there. I better try e5. Again, there's bishop takes h6 here, and now if rook g8, there's rook h3, and this is mating like this. Quite a lot of forcing moves show white's got a really dangerous attack here behind the scenes. And if g6, queen h6, and if taking there, bishop g5, rook h3 threatening, queen h8 checkmate. And if black has to give up the queen, that's not very good. And if g takes, check, and rook g3 check here, That rook lift is really powerful. Knight e6 actually wins the queen here with that pin pawn. So yeah, there's a lot of dangers now lurking after rook d3 with this rook lift. So queen e7 was played. And now, it's the mysterious thing about chess, the wonderful thing about chess. The liability backward pawn has been turned into, well, a pass pawn is shielding it now in this main line of the game. Knight c6, forcing move, and now rook takes, and we have a pass pawn. The thing is, can this be dislocated on one? It's a little bit tricky. In fact, white might be threatening here things like bishop takes h6, hitting the knight. The knight actually stepped back, so it's actually a protected piece now. But it was protecting e5, so that's an open invitation for bishop e5, threatening mate. Now queen g5 was played. If f6, it seems bishop d4, so we're targeting e6, and after this is, you might find this odd, but in fact bishop takes b6, this is quite forcing, and there's a key move here which actually guarantees white, because of that pass pawn, a big advantage. I wonder if you can guess it here. White's playing get a big advantage by force. You might be surprised, but this has massive impact in this position, rook d1, because the pawn also acts as a hook for d7. So for example, you know, rook d7 here, and that's just a huge pawn, and black's really tied down and horrible things are happening. So, but if just follow this variation here, rook takes, check, and white can actually make sure that black hasn't got perpetual check, play g3, and okay, there's this threat to get on the knight squares, but with careful play white actually navigates to a position where the king goes in for the attack and the pass pawn is about to triumph. It's going to be absolutely lost for black in that line. So yeah, f6 doesn't seem to it could trigger off that sort of thing. We have queen g5, but now c7, so leaving the queen hanging because of the promise of getting another queen, so that can't be taken because of taking another queen. There's nothing black to do there. So protected pass pawn technically. Rook d5, the knight's useful for stopping it queening clearly. Check, queen g6, queen b4. Now that holds on to the b1 square. This is a bit tricky, this position for both sides, because otherwise, yeah, black might be able to deflect the rook. So for example, if queen f3 had been played, rook takes e5 deflects the rook for the white's back row, getting mated. So queen b4 looks like an odd technical move. Why b4 in particular? So we're about to see what it can offer. Queen d3, securing the back row, h3 prophylaxis. Secure one's position before going on the attack a bit. Queen b5, queen e4 check. And now actually there's a strong idea of c4 as well. This pawn's overloading black's position, so black has to do a compromising forcing move, it seems. f4, that weakens e5 considerably and leaves white with a nice outpost on e5. Queen f4, so a nice outpost and still some attacking potential and a horrible protected pass pawn. Queen d7, the bishop just drops back here, letting the queen protect the pawn now. Knight c8, queen goes to g3, rook d6, and now white improves the position, and you might think, well, hold on, black's about to engulf this pawn with rook c6 taking on c7, but white plays h4, reinforcing another outpost square just in time, the g6 square, after rook c6 h5. So queen g6 is now possible, and this is a real countermeasure against losing the c pawn. Queen f7 was played by Magnus. Unfortunately, this doesn't work. Queen takes c7 because of check, and bishop e5 is a key move, which seems to be the most accurate. And here white basically plays this, so covering the exit squares before trying to deliver a final killer check. Black would have to give up material, and that's end of game there. So yeah, these variations are not very nice at all. If knight d5, so we saw if knight d6, pardon me, queen takes e6, and then bishop takes d6, so white's winning material there. Yes, it's pretty horrible. And in this line, if rook takes c7, check, rook takes e6, crashing through like that, and if knight d6, just take that knight. So that's horrible, yeah. So queen f7, bishop e5, yeah, white's got a dream possession here, massive outpost on e5, black's awkward pawn chain, protected pass pawn. We see knight b6, and now rook a1, yeah, this going for the a pawn to crash through, knight c4, rook takes a7. Yeah, this is pretty difficult for black. Knight takes e5, queen takes, and it's hopeless here for black. White is threatening c8, hitting the queen and as well as queening, so if takes, queen, rook takes. So Magnus played queen takes h5, hoping for a perpetual check. Just to quickly look at a token move, you know, c8, just to show this on the board, would be winning for white. Or if queen f6, there's taking, and then c8 check. So yeah, so here though, it's Liren to play. Is there anything special in this position, you might ask? I'm asking you now. White to play and win. Actually, it was quite a beautiful finish, kind of, yeah, talked about actually on Reddit and other places, this finish here. Can you spot it if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video? White to play. So I think one of the golden checklists for any chess player is check all checks. Doesn't matter how outrageous, because we want to in our limited capacity be able to calculate at least the forcing variations, but there's a particular check in this position. Okay, I hope you can guess it. Queen takes g7. It actually does something quite special here. If c8, just to recap by the way, because that seems to threaten mate here, black just gets perpetual here, and if any time the king goes to here, then it's pushed back for this perpetual to carry on. So that would have just drawn basically c8. So queen takes g7, and now check and queening. It's not often you get that sort of move. King f6, and now again there's perpetual if queen takes c6. You know, the check here would guarantee perpetual, but aiming for the king instead. Now queen d8 check, and the game ended here. Unfortunately, there's a splat if king e5. I wonder if you can visualize it. I'll put it on the board. King e5. Oh dear. If king e5, yeah, can you spot the winning move? The backward c pawn has a purpose after all here. It's got an upside. It supports d4 here. Queen d4 checkmate. And on king g6, it's quite swift after queen g8 check. And can you see here? No messing around here again. Yeah, don't mess around with anything else, but there's queen g7 checkmate. Yeah. So yeah, the final position is not great. Okay, Magnus is just human. He's human like the rest of us. He's not invincible. No one claims he's invincible. In the rapid, yeah, this is one of his losses in the rapid at the moment. But overall, it's been absolutely brilliant in the last few months, and I suspect he's going to do much better in the Blitz section of this tournament. I think his intuition is really above the others. I believe so. I believe he will be a favourite for winning the Blitz. Okay, he's human just like the rest of us. Okay, so I thought Liren is really a talented player, the top Chinese player in the world and number 3 in the world generally. So he has got amazing dynamic capabilities when given attacking opportunities, as this game shows. So congratulations to Team Liren as well. I hope you enjoyed this game video. If you did, please check out this bit.ly link. You can play me or other YouTubers. That bit.ly link, 2 capital Y small v small a 5 capital M capital B, like 5 megabytes. So 2 capital Y VA 5 megabytes, and that will give you a link, and I'll be able to invite you for a game actually after, if you register with that link. I'm playing like hundreds of people from YouTube and other places actually at the moment in turnstile chess, so that gives you a chance to analyze positions, check out the openings, etc. So yeah, okay, hope you got something from this. Thanks very much.